Crawling. Crawling in SQLMAP refers to the process of automatically discovering and testing for potential SQL injection vulnerabilities in a target website by navigating through its web pages. SQLMAP can scroll through a website to find links, forms, and parameters that may be vulnerable to SQL injection attacks. Let's understand how crawling works with this example. This is our target, and we are crawling with a depth of 3. The -u specifies the target, and the --crawl equals 3 indicates that SQLMAP should crawl the website up to the depth of 3 levels from the initial page. Let's press enter and see what we get. It may take some time, because it's crawling for all the possible parameters and pages, and vulnerable injection points in the target. We can see that it has found the login.php page. Currently it is running in single thread mode, which is why it is running slow. But we can also increase the number of threads that SQLMAP should use to speed up the process. It asks, do you want to store crawling results to a temporary file for eventual further processing with other tools? Let's press N for now. It has also found an injection point with the parameter pp inside the HPP file. Do you want to test this URL? Let's press yes and test it. Now it is testing this URL, which is at the depth of 1. Testing for SQL injection on PP. Boolean-based connection. So it is testing all of the possible DBMS, and then it will find which DBMS is being used by the target. Do you want to reduce the number of tests? Let's press yes. We should not have used the depth of 3 for this test because we are just learning about it. Let's press no. So it has found some parameters that are injectable. The parameter was cat or category. The type is a Boolean-based blind, and it also gives us the payload that we should use by exploiting the database. Do you want to exploit this SQL injection? Let's press yes. We want to skip further, yes. All right. So we can see that the results are being stored in this CSV file. SQLMAP has found that the backend database is MySQL, the operating system is Linux, the PHP used, and the version of MySQL. Let's see the resulting file that was given by the SQLMAP. So this was the target, and this is the parameter. This is the technique, use blind, error, time, union. So we can see that this parameter in the URL is vulnerable to SQL injection. So this is how we can use the crawl function if you don't know the parameters that may be injectable. Now, as we have seen during this scan, we were presented with different questions. SQLMAP was asking us lots of questions and there were some default answers too. In order to automatically select the default answer for any queries that SQLMAP has for us, for customization and so on, we can use the batch option. Let's again run the previous command, but reduce the crawling depth to 2, and also use the batch switch. This batch switch will save our time by selecting the default answers to any query, or to any prompts presented by SQLMAP. Let's press enter, and we will see that all the operation is automatically done by SQLMAP and we do not have to enter anything else. Technique. Now let's see how to use a specific technique that we learned about in previous videos, by using a switch called technique. Let's crawl to the depth of 3, and use the technique equals union. Press enter. Number of threads for faster operation. Let's use 4 threads. We should have used the batch switch for automatically selecting the default answers. But it's okay. We want to test this URL. Let's test this URL. Yes. Yes. Alright, so let's see this result file. Let's cat the output. So we can see that this result was found using the technique, U with union. This is how you can specify a technique, by using the -- technique switch, and then equal to the technique that you want to use. Now let's learn about threading, for speeding up processing. If you are testing a very large website, then you should use multiple threads. More than one thread for this. Let's also use the batch switch for automatically selecting the default answer, crawl to depth of 3, and -- thread 5. By default, the number of threads are 1. And the maximum threads that you can use is 10. But for now let's use 5 threads, and press enter, and we will see that our operation will be a little faster than when we were using only 1 thread. So this is how you can speed up the scanning, by using the threading function. Risk. Now let's learn about the risk that could be associated with using SQLMAP in testing for SQL injections. The -- risk feature in SQLMAP is used to control the level of risk associated with SQL injection tests. SQLMAP uses this parameter to decide how aggressively it should test for SQL injection vulnerabilities. The risk level ranges from 1, which is the lowest risk, to 3, which is the highest risk. Let's use our previous command, but this time use the -- risk and 1 for low risk. Let me break up the whole command for you. -U for the target. -- batch for selecting default answers. This is for crawling. This is for speeding up using file threads, and the risk is currently set to 1, which is the lowest risk. The low risk of level 1 is used to perform a basic and safe test. It is less likely to cause disruption on the target website. It is also recommended for initial testing on production systems to minimize the risk of affecting site performance or stability. So initially, you should use a risk of 1 in order to not disrupt the environment that you are testing. The risk level 2 is chosen when you have authorization to perform a more thorough testing and are willing to accept a slightly higher risk of disruption. It can help discover vulnerabilities that might not be found at a lower risk level. And a level 3 risk is used when you have explicit authorization to perform aggressive testing and are prepared for the possibility of causing disruption. This level is suitable for situations where thorough testing is crucial, even when it carries a higher risk. You should be very cautious when using the risk parameter, especially at higher risk levels, 2 or 3. Testing at a higher level can potentially disrupt the targeted site or trigger security measures, so it should only be done on systems for which you have explicit permissions. So this was all about the risk associated with using SQLMAP, from 1 to 3, 1 being the lowest risk and 3 being the highest risk. Now let's learn about the level of testing. Sometimes when you are testing some target for SQL vulnerabilities, you cannot find these vulnerabilities easily. So you have to increase the level of testing. The level is associated with the aggressiveness of testing in SQLMAP. It controls the depth and aggressiveness of the SQL injection testing. It determines how thorough SQLMAP testing should be when attempting to exploit SQL injection vulnerabilities on a target website. The level parameter accepts values from 1 to 5, 1 being the least aggressive and 5 being the most aggressive. Let's apply a threat of 5. And a level of 3. But please note that as you increase the risk, or the level, there are more chances that you will be presented with false positive results. We can see that as we have increased the level from the default of 1 to level 3, it is taking a lot of time, because it is aggressively and deeply testing for the vulnerabilities. Let's stop this test and copy the result that we have. Now let's understand the verbosity. Let's type SQLMAP -help-v. The V stands for verbose. This -v option is used to get the details of the testing while we are running SQLMAP. There are different levels of verbosity, from 0 to 6. Level 0 will show only the Python trace specs, errors, and critical messages. Level 1 also shows important information and warning messages. 2 shows debug messages. And 3 shows payloads. 4 shows HTTP requests. 5 shows HTTP response headers. And 6 shows the HTTP response page content. Let's see all of these one by one. Let's do -v and level 1 for now. So we can see that as we are scanning the target, we are also getting some results. We are seeing different details. Let's increase the verbosity level from 1 to 3. So we can see the debug information as well, which was not present before. Also, we can see the get and post parameters that are being sent or used by SQLMAP. Now let's not use crawl, but use the parameter directly. Let's do p equals 1, a thread of 5, and verbosity level to 5, which is the maximum. We have used an extra double quote. We are seeing lots of information during the testing because we have increased the verbosity level to a maximum of 5. We can see the HTTP responses in the request and also different headers. We can see which host we are testing, which user agent is being used, SQLMAP, and so on. So this is how we can increase the verbosity to see detailed information used by SQLMAP. And now, let's cancel it. So this was all about the verbosity.